Previously on Coffee with Kenobi.
Supposed to be Christmas lights around them. They're really sort of foil wrapped bulbs, and sticking his tongue out there. Yes, he is.
One of my favorite things I ever heard you say is the first time we had you on the show, probably about 4 years ago. The question came up about your favorite character, and you said, "Well, it's not called Rancho Jar Jar."
Hi, this is Ashley Eckstein, founder of Her Universe and the voice of Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. And you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
From my conversation with Steve Sansweet, the CEO of Rancho Obi-Wan. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, show number 160. We are your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, rhetoric, and the best travel tips this side of the galaxy. Happy New Year, as this is our first official show in 2019, and I am your host, Dan Z, drinking One Nation coffee out of my BB-8 Caffeine Keeps Me Rolling coffee mug from Hallmark. Coffee with Kenobi is brought to you by MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, for all of your travel needs to Disney theme parks and cruise lines, as well as anywhere you want to go on vacation. Be sure to go to www.mousefantravel.com, the official travel agency of Coffee with Kenobi. On CWK, I invite you to join me as we think about the mythology of Star Wars in a whole new way and maybe laugh a little bit in the process. You are here with your Star Wars family as we go to our favorite coffee shop and talk Star Wars. On today's show, Clayton Sandell and Anthony Breznican join us as we take a closer look at Anthony's article from Entertainment Weekly about what's coming from Star Wars in 2019. Tom has the news, including some information on Star Wars Resistance and Celebration Chicago, and much more. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi. Before we kick off the show, I want to thank everyone for your feedback on shows number 158 and 159. Those were both shows where my students took the microphone and were able to share their insights on Star Wars based on what we did in our mythology class in the fall of 2018. Hearing from educators, Star Wars fans, and of course the kids themselves and their parents. Boy, the feedback has been wonderful, and seeing them empowered and excited. And it's amazing. I mean, there are a lot of students who aren't comfortable sharing their thoughts necessarily out loud, let alone on a podcast heard by many people. So this was exciting for me and amazing to see their growth and their maturity through this process. What a culmination of an amazing semester. I am so proud of them. Thank you again so very much. I also wanted to let everybody know that we are no longer having Coffee with Kenobi blogging regularly on the website. A major reason for that is we're actually in a place where we're running out of space on our website. We've had this website for 5 years, and I've been getting email updates from our host that we are reaching capacity for the website. And to be honest, it gets expensive. And if I have to weigh the pros and cons and I have to find something that works for our Coffee with Kenobi's budget, because we certainly have a budget, we had to do something. So Lisa and I and Matt and a number of people have gone through, and we try to delete some other articles that are well past expired and are no longer relevant to Star Wars or fandom. And we're trying to make more room because we need to be able to give you the information, news from Disney and Lucasfilm, and promote our podcast, because that is our number one priority here at Coffee with Kenobi. So that is why you won't see regular blogging anymore. Now, there will be some guest blogging on occasion. We'll still try to do some reviews when we can, but the majority of things are going to come from Coffee with Kenobi, Legends Library, Comics with Kenobi, Lattes with Leia, and Resistance Reactions, because that has always been the focus of our show, to bring you the best podcast we can. Everything else has been wonderful and amazing, and I've gotten to meet so many awesome Star Wars fans because of CWK blogging and the blogging program. Now, let's be very, very, very clear on this. Every single one of our bloggers are wonderful. They're great writers. They're insightful. They teach me things about writing, about Star Wars, about fandom. Every single time I read their work, and this is one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make for the show. They are still very much all wonderful members of this family. They're active members of Coffee with Kenobi, and I am going to miss that collaborative process, but I know for a fact that I've got this wonderful bullpen of hosts to join me on the show, so no one is going away for sure. We've had a lot of great emails and conversations about this topic, and everyone has been incredibly supportive, but I can't thank everybody enough for everything they've done for this show, for their writing, for their enthusiasm, and just being great friends of myself and Corey and this entire Star Wars community. Thank you so much. There will be still, as I said, guest blog opportunities coming up, so they're not going away. And Rob from the Bearded Trio has graciously offered to publish their future work on the Bearded Trio, which is an amazing website you should all be reading daily anyway for the latest from John Williams, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas. So their writing isn't going away, and they're so talented and so involved in fandom that you're still going to see them everywhere. So thank you so much to Melinda, Mike, Mediocre Jedi, Becca, Jason, Pam, Craig, James, Dennis, Jay, Eric, Joe, Ryder, James, and anyone else who's ever contributed to being a blogger on Coffee with Kenobi. You have made us the site that we are and the family that we are, and I can't thank you enough.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee are two returning guests. First, we're going to bring in from Good Morning America and Nightline, ABC correspondent Clayton Sandell.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you happen to be listening and whatever time, and Happy New Year.
Well, thank you, sir. Happy New Year to you. Good to chat with you again, as always. Also joining us on today's show is Entertainment Weekly writer and the author of Brutal Youth, Anthony Breznican.
May the force be with you.
And you as well. So that's always a tricky one to respond to. I feel like sometimes you feel like you're in church and you don't know how to respond.
That is very churchy, isn't it? With you.
I like it. That's a good word. So obviously this segment, it's the beginning of 2019, and Anthony wrote a great article about what's coming from Star Wars in 2019. And I thought I'd take the opportunity to talk to these great guys about their overall opinions and sort of get excited for what's going down the pipe in 2019 from Star Wars. I think it's fair to say, gentlemen, this might be, I'm not one to give into hyperbole, but this could be possibly the biggest year in Star Wars we've ever seen before.
I think it is. It's looking ahead to the TV shows, the movie, the video games, the virtual reality games. You've got Star Wars Celebration this year. You didn't have that last year. You've got the Galaxy's Edge theme parks opening at Disneyland and Walt Disney World. In addition to that, all of the usual comic books and novels. It's quite a lot.
I was amazed at just how much, and first of all, thank you, Anthony, for putting all this in one place. until you did that, and I clicked through it, and it was like, oh my gosh, there is a lot of stuff, and especially on the publishing side, which I was really kind of blown away by. There's just a ton of stuff coming.
Yeah, quite a lot.
It's pretty fantastic. The volume is amazing. I'm certainly got a few things I'm looking forward to in an extra special way, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So we've broken this down into basically three different categories. We've got things we're going to be viewing and experiencing on the big screen or streaming experiences, and then in the world of publishing. So the first four things that we have in this article that Anthony created. First of all, obviously, I think the money shot, that would be episode 9. Guys, where are you at on episode 9 in your excitement level? I know for me personally, not having a Star Wars film over the Christmas season really whetted my appetite even more so.
To be honest, it's more of an anxiety level because we don't yet have a title, and I don't want to be stuck in traffic or in a movie screening when that drops. So I'm dying to find out just when they plan to reveal that. That's always the fear when you're on the Star Wars beat, is that you're somewhere indisposed, and Lucasfilm just decides to drop some news on you. Like when they announced the actual official cast list of episode 9, I happened to be at the Disney Studios watching a preview of Solo special features and deleted scenes, like in their offices. And then I was like, happened to look at my phone and like, can I have the Wi-Fi password really quickly? And
you couldn't have given me a heads up. Yeah.
A heads up would have been nice, but sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. And it's just nice to be, Johnny on the spot with it. So I'm wondering when they're going to announce that. I think they're going to have to announce that soon because It's going to be very hard to keep in the box, and you don't want it leaking out by way of, some brand of dog food that is has a Star Wars license, or Lego
or the
box
back of a
or
John
something
Williams
like that.
soundtrack.
Yeah. So they're going to want to put that out soon. So my excitement level is like, okay, I want to know what this thing's called. And then I have a feeling we're not going to see much until we get to Star Wars Celebration.
I agree with you. I think April in Chicago is where we're gonna get to see our first taste of it, most likely. I believe that's how it was for episode 8, if memory serves, including the poster as well. Clayton, what about you? I know obviously you and I chatted quite a bit and hung out at the solo premiere. And I think I kind of know where you're at, but some of our Coffee with Kenobi family listeners may not be as aware.
Yeah, I'm very excited, but there's also a little bit of anxiety, less so in the rollout of it, but more the how are they going to wrap this up? I am waiting. I can't wait for the moment when J.J. Abrams' name comes up in blue font and the music plays, and I'm sitting there reflecting on this story that has been part of all of our DNA for me since I was 4 years old. And I can't wait to kind of sit there and kind of have that moment where it's like, okay, wow, that's how it ends. And so, but overall, I mean, I can't wait. I'm very excited.
The biggest head scratcher for me on this one, and it's really, really very minor, because as I said at the top of the show, not having a Star Wars film around the Christmas season, I missed it tremendously. I'm ecstatic about this movie. I'm actually not anxious at all, because I feel very at peace with where The Last Jedi ended, and I feel like it opened a lot of doors for us as far as what to look forward to. Of course, the Carrie Fisher footage is something that I think is tantalizing and exciting. Finding out Rey's journey, of course, will be amazing. When people say to me, and I get this question a lot, especially with some of my students, they say, well, what else is there to tell? Well, I mean, we don't know anything about what's going to happen with Resistance besides a few very minor little blips throughout some comics and things like that. There's a lot we don't know about what's going to happen. We know Mark Hamill is going to be back. We know we're going to see, I guess in theory, what's going to happen with Kylo Ren's arc. Will he be more Kylo, or will he be more Ben Solo by the end of this film? It's hard to say, but it's wonderful. And there's definitely a bit of bittersweet for me, because as far as we are aware, this truly is the end of the Skywalker saga. It's not the end of Star Wars films, but it will be the end of the Skywalker saga. And I think that brings kind of a mixed bag to the table.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the ending of the Skywalker saga is huge, but they have. I think they've done well with Rogue One, with Solo. I'm looking forward to Celebration to see what they announce after. Hopefully, they will announce what comes after all of this. And you mentioned Carrie. I'm really interested to see how they handle that, how they wrap it up. I have no doubt that JJ and the team will be able to come up with a story and a way to use that unused footage to make it work. But how they're going to do that, and will it involve ILM helping out here or there, voice actors helping out to complete that character and what she needs to do. All of that to me is I think probably the one thing I'm looking forward to seeing how they handle that the most.
I think that'll be what gets a lot of people into the theaters who maybe are on the fence about this. So it's hard to imagine anyone being on the fence about episode 9. But Anthony, another key point that you wrote in your article was you talked about the combo of Luke, Leia, and Lando. Having Billy D. Williams back in the Star Wars fold in this capacity, I think is something that is great. I mean, he's obviously a little bit older than some of the other actors, but he's Billy D, and you really can't go wrong with him at all.
He's a smooth operator, man, no matter what age he is. I cannot wait to get Lando Calrissian back. I'm so happy that Billy D. Williams is returning to the franchise. It's overdue. Lando's a cool character, and Donald Glover did a great job portraying him in Solo. but I think it's always good to honor the original too. The OG, or in this case, the OL, the original Lando.
I'm wondering what will happen if we'll have a great sequence with him and the Falcon. Hard to say. Let's go ahead and move on past the movies, though, and we'll talk about The Mandalorian. We've gotten a lot of information over the past month or so, official wording really on the cast of The Mandalorian. And I think this thing is going to usher in, I believe it's Disney Plus, right? That's the name of the streaming service. There's a lot of promise here, and I think we're going to see a much darker take on Star Wars than we've seen before, but still with that Star Wars flair. Clayton, what are you thinking about The Mandalorian? Where are you on this one?
I'm excited by this. It'll be fun to see how they tell a live action story in a way that we haven't seen before, episodically over, however many episodes they're going to do. Part of me is trying to avoid the spoilers, so there's a lot I don't want to know, but I want to be surprised by it. But I think out of the two, I'm very excited by the Cassian Andor series as well. I can't wait to see what they do. I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, you've got tremendous filmmaking production talent behind it, but you also have like ILM is doing the special effects and the visual effects, and I think if they stay true to Star Wars, then it'll be a tremendous series, and plenty of good stories to tell.
I don't know how dark it's going to be. I mean, I don't know how dark Star Wars can get. I would love to see a Star Wars horror story, like exploring some sort of Sith relic that really opens you up to sort of the dark side of the Force. But that may be a ways down the road. This just looks like, I like the idea of them attaching a genre to a Star Wars story. So with this, you're getting a Western, sort of reminds me of all those Clint Eastwood Westerns where he was a former Civil War soldier who's now wandering out west. There are a lot of tales like that. The Mandalorian has survived the, this galactic civil war, and now he's roaming in sort of the far-flung, lawless portions of the galaxy after Return of the Jedi. I'm down with that. The Cassian Andor story is going to be a spy tale. The showrunner for that is from The Americans. I'm down for that. I like the idea of not just taking a character and spinning off a new story around that person, but actually giving it a different vibe, saying Star Wars itself is not a genre. It's a format for applying a genre. And
when I say that it's darker, I mean, I certainly don't mean like that term is thrown around quite a bit. I don't mean like in a Game of Thrones style. I feel like it's going to be more possibly aiming towards more of an older audience, whereas opposed to something like Star Wars Resistance is more for a younger audience. They both are great, and they both have that Star Wars spirit about them. But I mean, the stakes will probably be a little bit more intense. I mean, when you see someone like Nick Nolte is going to be in this thing, I mean, that's pretty outstanding. I think there's a lot of promise there. Just a few things we've had. And of course, on Christmas Day, Jon Favreau shared some pretty exciting images of some bounty hunters we know from The Empire Strikes Back that are going to make an appearance. So I love that they've got this wonderful playground to pick from in Star Wars. And they're able to, of course, because of the wizardry of the story group, they're able to bring it all into a beautiful place, which leads me to the Clone Wars Season 7. I was lucky enough to be in the room at San Diego Comic-Con when they announced that the Clone Wars was coming back. It was an unforgettable moment. And we don't know much about when this is going to air as well, but we do know that the cast of the original series is coming back. We're going to see more of Ahsoka Tano, and I believe it's going to end up around where Revenge of the Sith starts off. So this is basically probably the thing that many of us have been looking forward to for quite a long time.
The Clone Wars, when I heard it was coming back, that was at Comic-Con this year, and it was pretty exciting because they build up to it as a kind of retrospective, 10 years looking back at the origin of the Clone Wars series. I was not a huge fan of the first installment of the Clone Wars, which was done as a feature film. I thought it really struggled and didn't hold together.
Yes.
I feel like they pulled it together after that, as a lot of shows do. A lot of shows, they air the pilot, and then the first season is the show kind of finding its footing, and then the best episodes come in the subsequent seasons. And I do feel that Clone Wars got better and better. It had its own voice and identity as a Star Wars show that fit very well within that prequel era. And then it was abruptly abandoned, which I think was a shame, because I think Ahsoka deserved to have a conclusion rather than one that was like woven into to Rebels. I love those episodes, but I felt like she deserved her own finale, as part of the Clone Wars tale. It's going to be interesting, because I feel like Filoni tried to conclude her story in as much as he could with Rebels, and then now he's got to go back and tell sort of the in-between part, So that's going to be a little bit tricky, and I kind of wonder where he's going to go with her character in the future, because it seems like one he's going to follow throughout her life. And, the fact that we meet her when she's very young in the Clone Wars. I forget, how old is she when she becomes a Padawan? She's like early teens,
Isn't
right?
she? Yeah, like 12 or 13, I thought.
Is that how young? Yeah, well, I guess, yeah, okay.
I think so.
I guess that's how old Ezra was when we met him, right? So,
right.
And that's an age where you're really into Star Wars. So it appeals to kids to see a story of, someone their age or their size doing heroism. And so, we could follow Ahsoka. I guess she would be approximately, a few years older than Luke, right? About 12 or 13 years older than Luke in the Force Awakens era. So she could be a very old lady by the time we catch up with her. I think that'd be kind of interesting.
And you mentioned like sort of the way that they've been able to tell her story through, a lot of it through things way outside of their control, but very much in the classical mythological archetype. We have media and res, where the story jumps around in sequence, in chronological sequence, and eventually we've got this interwoven tale that features a really strong overarching plot of this character that is, as you mentioned, the Clone Wars theatrical release. I remember seeing the first showing of that and thinking, do we need words like snips and things like that? But ultimately, she ended up being one of our favorites. And Clayton, when you look at Ahsoka Tano and getting the Clone Wars back, are there certain stories or elements of the Clone Wars that you were hoping to see?
Yeah, I was not a huge Clone Wars fan until really the end of the run. I would watch it with my son a little bit, but I did not get into it very much in the beginning. So when it went away, it was fine, went away. When it came back, I really didn't have a strong feeling either way. But talking to I had a chat with Filoni about this, and I was happy for him, because he sort of always felt like the story didn't get completed in the way that he wanted to complete it. And then, of course, I come to understand and appreciate just how much fans love this character. And how much they wanted to see her come back. So I was happy for Filoni, and I was happy for the fans that are happy to see it come back. And I'll definitely check it out. But I have to admit, I wasn't into it the first time around.
No, totally fair enough. I think, as you mentioned, Anthony, it picked up steam much later, especially seasons 3 and 4. That's really when it hit its kind of its sweet spot. And, I think a lot of people, when we were at San Diego Comic-Con, a lot of people were having suddenly, when this was announced, suddenly there was this huge debate over, well, I like Rebels better, I like Clone Wars better. And I think that serves for some interesting conversational fodder. But let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to look at more things coming out from Star Wars in 2019. And in this segment, we're going to be looking at different experiences coming to us. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Coffee with Kenobi.
As we continue on with the show, I want to thank our CWK Patreon contributors, Rebecca Raven, Dennis Keithley, Terry Lee, Ben Elkington, Melinda Wolf, Aaron Harris, Chris Kavarka, Angela Sauce, Mediocre Jedi, Yancey Evans, Caroline Maselli, Tim Bungaroth, Chris Metz, LJ Souter, Thea Selby, Jeff Ellis, Daz Davies, Christian Dale, Jason Hall, Brian McKinney, Connie Shee, Mike Audette, Jared Cantor, BJ Smith, Eric Struthers, Nick Dico, and Mark Suter. They are part of what helps to make Coffee with Kenobi grow and expand. And with rising costs to produce a podcast that has the ambition that is matching what I want to do with the show so I can get everyone involved, it costs money. Travel, running the website, all of these things all are a huge factor in that, which is why Patreon is such a huge help for us. It really makes a big difference. But it's not just about supporting the show, although that certainly does mean the world to me, but you get something out of it. There are t-shirts, coffee mugs, and probably most importantly, you get access to CWK Pour Over, which is our weekly show that Corey, myself, and Tom Gross produce and release every Sunday. They're basically about a half hour long. We've released 40 of them so far, and the back catalog is all right there for you. We talk about all kinds of various geek topics that are interesting to us, popular culture. We talk about things going on in our lives, and we have an absolute blast discussing and sharing these conversations with you. And the feedback on our Patreon message boards has been nothing short of stellar. So let me play a clip for you from this week's show.
Him using his webs and swinging around and climbing walls and all the stuff that Spidey does didn't take my breath away near as much as the PS4 Spider-Man game. Do you agree with that, Corey?
Different application. I mean, right? So it's like in the game, I'm controlling him.
True.
And I get to experience that. Where in the movie,
it didn't feel as sweeping,
no
though. I don't think.
No, it didn't feel like it was like that awe-inspiring. Like,
yeah.
Oh my goodness, wow, this is just incredible. Like, I felt like Miles got that maybe towards the end, just a little bit when he.
But
was
even when
Spidey
was like, it's fun, but I feel like maybe that was just. I mean, I think the PS4 game sort of took Spider-Man's web slinging abilities to a whole new level.
Well, you got to figure too. This is animation, so they're going to get away with a lot more stylistics. And
True.
At that point, I was kind of rating the Spider-Mans on their style in the sense of like, okay, how long have they been Spider-Man, and what kind of style they have, or what kind of tricks up their sleeve. Like he was handling, like you mentioned, that Spider-Man was handling Green Goblin no problem. I felt like he was very veteran, very like on top of his game, and maybe
didn't even seem scared.
Yeah, he was totally on. He was on par with anything, and then.
As I said, those are available for you every single week on CWK's Patreon page, which is www.patreon.com/coffeewithkenobi. You can also access it on our webpage. We have this. We have CWK Lens, which is video of me talking to each of you personally. When we get a chance to do that, we're going to try to do it more daily to get you more involved in the conversation. So if you're interested, go again to www.patreon.com/coffeewithkenobi. One Nation Coffee is the official brew of Coffee with Kenobi. It smells amazing. No, that's not true. It smells fantastic, and it tastes even better. They even have a subscription service that is very convenient. Be sure to go to www.onenationcoffee.com, enter the code Kenobi10, and you will get 10% off your first order. Get ready to enjoy the official brew of Coffee with Kenobi. We are back, and in this segment, as I said earlier in the show, we're going to look at, basically we're going to look at 4 different things. We're going to look at Star Wars Celebration Chicago, Galaxy's Edge on both coasts, Vader Immortal, which is a virtual reality experience, and then Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is a new game coming out from EA. Anthony, let's turn the microphone over to you. Of these 4 sequences, and we'll try to do a little more streamlined in this segment. Just sort of quick hits on your feelings on these 4 different topics. And is there anything that's maybe sticking out more to you as far as your level of anticipation and excitement? I mean, these are some major ones. I mean, Galaxy's Edge. I mean, of course, how could that not be on the top of everybody's wish list?
Yeah, that's way up there as a fan. As a reporter, I think Star Wars Celebration has really got my attention. There's a lot to talk about, not just this year, but on the horizon in the years to come for Star Wars. We don't know a whole lot about what's coming, and there must be a plan, right? So
let's hope so.
We know that there's a Rian Johnson trilogy that's in the works, and that the DBs from Game of Thrones have a trilogy in the works that they're producing. I'd love to get more information about that. There was a Obi-Wan movie they were developing. The Boba Fett movie has been put on the back burner for now, but I really want to know what's coming down the road, and we should probably find out soon.
The Vader Immortal virtual reality experience, that's kind of it's not like down in Disney World and Disneyland where you go and experience things. This is more of an in-home experience, correct?
Yeah, it's one of the Oculus products that you
yes.
It's like a home. It's like a home virtual reality game.
But written by David Goyer, which that says a lot.
Yeah, it's promising.
And I mean, I loved Secrets of the Empire. I just recently did it down at Disneyland for the first time, and
it's phenomenal,
fantastic, and really, it's between that and Galaxy's Edge, I kind of think that is where the next generation of Star Wars fan is going to have their stories told, in this immersive 3D kind of way that the kids expect these days. It was really well done. So I'm actually really excited to see how the Oculus thing turns out.
Oh, I've been talking with some Disney insiders who've been explaining to me about the evolution of the Millennium Falcon experience that's going to be happening at Galaxy's Edge on both coasts. And it sounds like, with 200 working buttons in these cockpits, you're talking about an experience that was very much inspired by this generation of gamers and video gaming. And there was some excitement, some anxiety through some of the Imagineers over, are people who are waiting in line for 3 or 4 hours just to get into Galaxy's Edge and then waiting 3 and 4 and 5 hours to get on the Falcon. Are they going to be discouraged if waiting all that time, they get on and they crash the Falcon and their ride is over? So they've developed some different things so that is not going to be a factor. But these experiences on this attraction are going to be different every single time. And it sounds like it's going to be something we've never seen before.
Well, I was just going to say, my 5-year-old son, when he found out that there were 200 buttons in the Millennium Falcon, that's all he can talk about now, that there are 200 buttons and he wants to push every single one of them.
They've already got it timed to a certain rhythm where they know that when the ride is over, everyone's going to want to take a selfie in the cockpit. And they're hiring people whose sole job is to get you out of the cockpit fast enough for the next group to come on in. That's the kind of level of intensity we're going to see. Yeah. Yep. Anthony, have you heard much more about either of these attractions and the experiences at Galaxy's Edge?
Yeah, I think a big part of the attraction is going to be not just the rides that you're on, but the little things that are tucked away, the signs, the shops, the characters who are wandering through. I think that's going to be a big part of the appeal is, the problem I have with Disneyland is, in Disney World is you wait a long time to get aboard one of those rides. Anywhere in the park, and you could easily spend your whole day waiting to get on 2 or 3 things. And the line for the Millennium Falcon ride, Smuggler's Run, and for what's it called, Rise of the Resistance, those are going to be extreme. And I hope that the Disney parks people find a way to manage it so that you're not showing up and spending hundreds of dollars to wait in line all day for one ride. So I don't know how you fix that, but it's worth thinking about. The Imagineers should put a little thought into also figuring out how to make sure that the guests have a good experience getting on these things.
It sounds like the pre-shows for this, and then there's going to be a lot of experiences inside Galaxy's Edge where you're going to have the ability to translate a whole lot of Orbesh. Did either of you ride the Indiana Jones attraction at Disneyland? I'm sure you both have. When it first came out, you got those little cards that you could translate the ruins, and they're going to have stuff in Orbesh all over the place. That's going to be something else.
My favorite thing was in the video that one of the videos they put out. I was trying to translate it, and it was like, so is this Seventh Son salvaging? And it's actually S&S salvaging, Sanford and Son salvaging. So there's like a little Sanford and Son joke in the in the Arabesh language. Things like that are kind of fun. You don't want a Christmas Story, remember to drink your Ovaltine.
I was going to say, at least it's not drink Pepsi or something, right?
Because that's what a lot of the translations were on the Indiana Jones ride. I think they're still there. Like, it's like AT&T sponsored. Right? Yeah. There's like AT&T promotional material embedded on these ancient walls of this Peruvian temple.
Well, you mentioned Celebration earlier, and I'm Celebration Chicago. I mean, since it's just a 2-hour car ride for me, I'm extra excited because it's very much in my hometown. I mean, you've got the Cubs are in town during Celebration Chicago. I mean, what could be better than that, right? But this is going to be an event that's going to be 5 days now, which some of the older celebrations were. But it's been a while since we've had a 5-day celebration, whereas the first day on Thursday, the 11th of April, is going to be very much just exploring the convention floor, no panels, no podcast stage or anything like that. Just being able to reunite with Star Wars friends and family.
It's really important for them that the fans turn out for this, and it's it's a gathering place from around the globe for people who love Star Wars. So they have to have some good stuff there to make it worth the trip, and they've done a good job, I have to say. In Orlando, they could easily just go and turn these into marketing fests and have their, Clone Wars or Force Awakens, Last Jedi panel, things like that. But then they had that 40th anniversary of Star Wars panel and brought out, Billy D and Harrison and Mark Hamill.
John Williams concert.
John Williams, yeah. I tell you, that's worth the price of admission right there. That's a pretty good thing to see.
Oh, tremendous. Clayton, when you, besides, of course, hanging out with me in Chicago, what else are some things you're looking forward to from Celebration?
That will be the highlight for sure. I'm looking forward to seeing that main sort of panel where the episode 9 cast will come out, and hopefully JJ will be there. And of course they will, if past history is a guide, they will debut a huge trailer and everybody's head will explode, and that'll be amazing. But I am, I remember in London, some of the most interesting stuff talk about Rogue One and things like that happen sort of after the main events. So I'm looking forward to the later events, the other events that where we hope to get some news about what films and what eras and what stories they plan on telling after episode 9. Having this online sort of Twitter Star Wars family that we all sort of talk and keep in touch over the year, and then to come to one place where all of those folks are, there's just nothing like it. So that's always fun.
Totally agree. Let's go ahead and take another break. When we come back, Tom will have news. And then after the news segment, we will return to our conversation with Clayton and Anthony. We're going to look at the world of publishing in Star Wars in 2019, as well as Star Wars Resistance in the Season 1 finale. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
MEI and Mouse Fan Travel is the way to go for all of your travel needs, especially when you're hearing these ideas out there of when Galaxy's Edge is going to open. We don't have an official date yet, so I wouldn't pick an official date as far as when you're going to go. But get ready, because when we get that announcement, you're going to go because when you get that announcement, we're going to want to run to MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. They have signature service, an expert device to help clients maximize their vacation time and dollar. They can help you and your family enjoy everything the Disney theme parks and the cruise line have to offer, help plan every detail, and will share with you invaluable tips. Check out www.mousefantravel.com today and let them know Coffee with Kenobi sent you. We are back, and it is time for our news segment. We've got a ton of brand new information, and you know what, buddy? I think we're going to be doing this a lot as we get closer to Celebration, less than 100 days until Celebration Chicago. And we've got some Celebration news as well as some other exciting things in the world of Star Wars animation. So take it away.
Indeed. The official announcement came this week on StarWars.com that a second season of Star Wars Resistance will come in the fall of 2019. Now, if you've seen the first half of season 1, you've come to know the Resistance to be a colorful, fast and fun story with vibrant anime-inspired look, and it takes place just before the events of The Force Awakens, and has introduced many new heroes and villains to the saga. Now, along with the announcement, a new mid-season trailer was revealed today that may bring some people who have not watched the series to this point on board. It reveals involvement of a major villain from Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. It gives us a direct placement of the time of the series as Kaz and Torra watch a broadcast of General Hux and his last day of the Republic speech. There are underwater stormtroopers, pirates, and more, all on this one trailer. Now, the second half of the season kicks off on January 13th, and season 2 will return this fall.
The notion that we're going to get to see that Hux speech or anything that directly intersects with the films, but from an animated perspective, puts the connectivity of Star Wars canon into a whole new stratosphere, really, because you know that, oh gosh, characters from Star Wars Resistance, the animated series, are there in that moment. I mean, I think that was my favorite part about that trailer. And of course, season 2 announced it's going to be back. Still not my favorite of all the Star Wars animated stuff, but that trailer sure helps whet my appetite and makes me just a little bit more excited about this thing. And again, you don't have to like it all, and there's going to be this stuff to appeal to different audiences, different tastes. But at its heart, at its core, at its soul, it's still got those key elements of Star Wars that we love so much. So this is cool.
Yeah, when we watched the trailer here at the house, my daughter said to me, "Dad, we got to catch up. We got to go back and catch up and get up to where it is, because this looks so great." And I love
how I felt too.
One more thing about the trailer that they showed in there that is something that I'm really, I don't know. I love when they show the impact that the war has on everyday average people.
Yes.
And when Poe and Kaz are flying through that solar system where the star had been sucked dry by Starkiller Base, just it had so much environmental and just human or life impact that it just that just gets to me.
Oh, I agree. Real world application.
Yeah. So, let's move on to our second story for today. Star Wars Celebration announced a host of big name voice actors who will be headed to Chicago this April, starting with a friend of Coffee with Kenobi and recently joined you, Dan, on Christmas, James Arnold Taylor, most notably known for playing the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Clone Wars. Now, joining James Arnold Taylor will be Matthew Wood, who is, among others, played the voice of General Grievous. Janina Gavankar, who is the actor behind Iden Verso in the video game Star Wars Battlefront 2, will be in attendance as well. Several Star Wars Resistance voices will be there, including Christopher Sean and Susie McGrath, who play Kaz and Tam Rivora. Also, Scott Lawrence, the voice behind the loving but stern father figure to Kaz, that would be Yarrick Yeager, will be joining the group as well. All will be in attendance to sign autographs and meet fans. So check out Star Wars Authentic's website for details on when tickets go on sale.
Yeah, Topps and everyone at Topps have done an amazing job of making this happen. I know Mark Van Olen is really excited because he's certainly a driving force behind Star Wars Authentics. And this is just the first announcement.
Yeah, right.
I will say, though, I know. From a personal standpoint, though, I missed not having Jazz at Celebration Orlando. So knowing that he's going to be at Celebration Chicago and bringing his infectious energy and enthusiasm is just great. It just made Celebration that much more exciting for me.
Yeah. And that's what struck me when I was so excited about this list. I thought, oh my gosh, this is just the beginning. Being my first Celebration, oh boy, I am so pumped for all these announcements to be coming out. So we'll be sure to keep everyone in the Coffee with Kenobi listenership on top of the Celebration news. To wrap up our stories for tonight, the Walt Disney Company announced that it will be raising prices mid-January at its domestic parks. This announcement comes just months before the opening of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Now, with all the different pricing schedules that exist between age groups and prime versus non-prime attendance dates to annual ticket prices, it's difficult to state how the increases specifically will be changed. But business group, news group, Seeking Alpha gives a percentage of about 10.4% increase across the board. So I took their number and looked at some specifics, and most of my numbers that I was figuring was about 9 to 10% increases. So it's all in that range. Now, in addition to the cost of admittance fee increases, daily parking prices will also be rising from $20 to $25. So if you're planning a visit to Disney World or Disneyland in 2019, stretch that budget just a little bit more to make the magic happen. Now, Dan, are you surprised by this announcement?
I'm not surprised, but I am surprised to the degree that it's being raised. I mean, you're building a 14-acre land on 2 different coasts, and the amount of money and interactivity and cast members you have to hire, and the paint, and I was just talking with Jim Hill recently, just putting some of the plants, moving some of the vegetation in and out of Galaxy's Edge is like, you're talking like $9,000 per different trees or plants. I mean, it's expensive, and they have to pay for it. And now we're going to have to pay for it. And I mean, sadly, that's just sort of the world that we live in. You want nice stuff. It's going to cost money. My fear is that we're going to get to a place where Disney's going to price themselves out of some families. And I don't think that's fair. I think everybody should get a chance to take their children to Disney World or Disneyland. And I hope that still is something that can happen. But you're definitely right. You're going to have to budget for it, stretch it out, and be prepared. And there are a lot of cost cutter things you can do to make it more affordable. I'm certainly going to point you to one of our sponsors, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, to be certain. So no, I'm not entirely surprised. I wish it wasn't. I mean, the cost is a lot. It's a lot of money. But I mean, I certainly think it's going to be worth it. But that's something that everybody has to decide sort of on their own.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised, and I don't mean that negatively. I just, like everything you said, it has to be covered somehow, and we're going to be the ones enjoying it. So, in an indirect, or in this case, a direct way, we'll also be paying for it. But I'm sure the experiences, the more expensive, or the whatever you want to say, they just get better and better and more realistic, and the experience is more, I don't know if I can say authentic, but definitely more fulfilling. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, very good. Thank you for bringing us the latest Star Wars news. Any other little nuggets, or are we all set to move on to another cup of coffee?
We're set to move on to another cup of coffee.
Okay. Thank you so much, buddy. We will be back, and I will return to my conversation with Clayton Sandell and Anthony Breznican of what is coming from Star Wars in 2019. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Coffee with Kenobi.
One Nation Coffee is the official brew of Coffee with Kenobi. I start my morning every day with One Nation Coffee because it is the best. You can start your coffee subscription so you never miss out on the best coffee in the galaxy by going to www.onenationcoffee.com today. Plus, enter the code Kenobi10 to set up a coffee subscription and save 10% off your first order. We are back, and before we start talking about Star Wars publishing in 2019, let's look at the Star Wars Resistance Season 1 finale. And Clayton, we just saw something fairly recently that gives us a lot of reason to be even more excited about Resistance, I think.
Right. So Resistance is coming back for a second season in the fall, and haven't seen the next episode just yet, but at some point during the latter half of this first season of Resistance, we get sort of the first real tie-in to The Force Awakens with this appearance of General Hux, which is kind of cool to see him, and the big speech that he gave in The Force Awakens is
the
back.
affable General Hux, yes,
the affable General Hux, yeah. So that's kind of cool, and I love how they have taken the care to weave that into the storyline. And I haven't seen all the Resistance episodes, but the ones I've watched with my son, we've really enjoyed. So I'm looking forward to see where they take that and how that series evolves as it goes on.
So, Anthony, for me, Star Wars Resistance, if you look at Clone Wars, Rebels, and then Resistance, Resistance has had the least impact on me of the 3 animated series, but that doesn't mean it's not, doesn't have merit and doesn't have its fan base, because it certainly has a nice following in Star Wars fandom. Is this a story that is essential to be told? It is not something that we're just getting more of.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that it's okay for Star Wars stories to not be for you. They can appeal to little kids. There could be some that I think should be for older fans, and that would go a long way toward satisfying some of them who want the sort of more hard-bitten, grittier tales. I'm cool with the kid-friendly Star Wars entry points like Resistance. Yeah, it doesn't resonate as deeply with me as it does my kids, but that's okay. I like seeing things through their eyes too, and it's perfectly fine to share. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the Lego animated Star Wars stuff, but I get its subversive humor, and I think it's really well done. It's just not something that's like, oh, I got to see that. I must see the next chapter of this story, and that's fine.
Right.
This is how you build a fandom. Not every Marvel story is for me. Sometimes there's the superhero squad, and it's the sort of cute little chunky versions of the Star Wars or the Marvel heroes, and that's how it should be. So yeah, Resistance I think they would be upfront about this too. It's aimed at the younger crowd, and the fact that they can lace it in with this, the General Hux storyline from The Force Awakens, that's cool too. Introduces the younger fans to The Force Awakens, which now is an old movie, right?
That's right. Well, and that shows the brilliance of what George Lucas started and what Lucasfilm was doing with this franchise, because they are aware that franchises sometimes have a very set shelf life. So with Star Wars, as it continues to reinvent itself and reach more and more people, while still telling stories that at its core are about families, surrogate families, and loyalty, redemption, sacrifice. These are all themes that are timeless, and I think that's what keeps bringing us back to the Star Wars table anyway. And I believe the comics, the Star Wars comics, especially anytime Darth Vader is in a series naturally, which can be tricky, I believe, because with Vader, less is sometimes more, but they're telling these amazing stories about him. Charles Soule just wrapped up his incredible run on Darth Vader, and Kieran Gillen, of course, did his back in 2015 and 16, where we see these different sides of Vader. And now we've got Vader Dark Visions. And then the cover, Clayton, we see Darth Vader very much as a knight.
Yeah, riding the horse creature thing, whatever that is. Yeah,
very Sir Mordred. Yeah,
interesting. I'm behind on the comics more than anything. I did love this latest run of Vader, but overall, I'm way behind on the comics. But it's I'll check it out. But it is kind of a weird image, Vader on a horse creature.
It's like this ominous black steed. I'm not even sure what the creature is, but I like it.
At first glance, it could have easily been an Iron Maiden cover. So in addition to that, we've got Obi-Wan, Jango Fett, and a number of other titles, including Star Wars Age of the Republic, Anakin Skywalker, Count Dooku, Padme Amidala, and General Grievous. So we've got sort of a resurgence of the prequel era, which when Lucasfilm was originally purchased by Disney, there was a lot of scuttlebutt that Disney was going to try to ignore the prequels, and I guess for a short time it was not their focus. I don't know that they ignored it, but it wasn't their focus. But now we're seeing it come back, not only in the comics, but also in books. Nathan, we've got, in addition to the titles I just mentioned, we've got The Queen's Shadow, which is going to be a Padme-centric novel, as well as Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray, which will showcase Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, which leaves a lot of excitement there as far as the opportunity for great storytelling.
That one is really one you should keep an eye on. I think Claudia Gray is one of the best writers working in the Star Wars field right now. She did a wonderful book called Bloodline, which is, I don't know if this is a good selling point or not, but it's like a middle-aged Leia story. It's Leia as a senator and diplomat after the fall of the Empire and Return of the Jedi. And she's dealing with the fallout. It's called Bloodline because you realize that nobody in general knows that she's the daughter of Darth Vader, and she's this New Republic leader, and it comes out, oh my God, you're the daughter of Darth Vader, and she has to kind of deal with that. And she's also on sort of like these spy missions and intelligence recruitment missions, foreshadowing the rise of the First Order. Ben Solo is mentioned as being off on a mission with Luke. You don't really see him or Luke, but you know that they're around. I think Han Solo is out racing somewhere, kind of trying to relax and get back to a more freewheeling side of his life. And she's trying to hold down the fort, literally, like trying to protect this burgeoning new republic. And just an amazing novel. I loved it so much, and it's one of my favorites. And she also did a great story in the Star Wars short stories book, From a Certain Point of View. Have you guys read any of that?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Cover to cover.
I'm trying to remember now the name of the short story she wrote. I just looked it up. Yeah, it's called Master and Apprentice. And it's basically old Obi-Wan is in the desert of Tatooine. This is before Luke, right before Luke and the droids come to find him, that they have Leia's secret message. And he's visited by the ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn, and it's told from the perspective of Qui-Gon. And it's all about what it's like to be a Force ghost, and how his consciousness is basically one with the Force, but then the Force allows him to draw it together and focus it so that Obi-Wan can see him and interact with him. And deep mythology, very short story, and all it is basically Qui-Gon preparing Obi-Wan, and he wants to tell him, your time is almost over, but he can't, because that is not allowed, but he knows. And so in a way it's saying goodbye to his friend, in the form that we know him, in the form that Qui-Gon knew him. And it's beautifully written, like just heartbreak. You do not expect a story about a Force ghost that Obi-Wan Kenobi be this moving. But like, I read it to my kids.
It is great.
And it's so powerful because there's a line in there about the art of letting go, like is one of the final things that a Jedi will master is the ability to let go. And that's a beautiful sentiment. A really mature,
kind of a foreshadowing to The Last Jedi.
Yeah, exactly. And just a very mature story told through the lens of Star Wars. So I'm really excited for whatever Claudia Gray puts down on paper.
I would say, I'm glad you mentioned Bloodline. That is my favorite canonical Star Wars novel. Just the sequence where it's revealed that she is the daughter of Darth Vader is unforgettable. Probably one of the better pieces of storytelling in all of Star Wars. And yeah, the story you mentioned From a Certain Point of View was poignant and lovely. And the fact that she gets to expand upon their story from the prequel era is fantastic. She also wrote, I started to mention this, she wrote the young adult novel Leia, Princess of Alderaan, which shows Leia basically being brought into the fold of the rebellion and finding out how heavily involved her parents are. There was a great confrontation with Grand Moff Tarkin. And also it is the first time that we see Leia subconsciously use the Force or call upon the Force when she's about to be suffocated in a mudslide, which is definitely a foreshadowing of what happens in The Last Jedi. And I've always looked at that novel as one of the reasons why I thought that sequence in The Last Jedi was so lovely, because it's not unprecedented. We have seen it before and done very, very well. So in addition to these novels, we also have, of course, Timothy Zahn, who knows a thing or two about writing a great Star Wars book. He's going to have the third in his Thrawn series, and we've got Industrial Light and Magic presents Making Solo, which will be great. There's a great kids book. I like what you wrote in the article about C-3PO not liking sand, because there's a nice nod there to our friend Anakin.
Not the thing that necessarily is for any of us older guys, but great for kids and fun to share with kids. So I'm down with it.
That's right. Oh, my son eats it up. He thinks it's amazing.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm looking forward to. 3PO does not like sand. My 5-year-old will love that. And there's the IDW, the Droid Tales, and there's lots of fun stuff for all different ages.
There's a lot of great stuff. It was. Is there anything else you want to say about 2019 before we wrap up the show? I see both of you are getting low on your coffee.
Well, since we're talking about publishing, the one book that I am really looking forward to, being a huge ILM geek, is Rob Brado's Making Solo book, which it's been a long time since we've had just an ILM or behind the scenes focused book like that. We've had the Art of books, which kind of double as behind the scenes books, but this one I'm really looking forward to.
That does look really promising.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Anthony, anything in 2019 that we didn't mention that you want to talk about before we wrap up the show?
We didn't talk about Jedi Fallen Order. That's the EA game. Some people bag on the new EA games and aren't fans of the Battlefront series. I'm not the biggest Battlefront fan myself. Had a hard time getting into that game and staying interested. But I haven't seen anything of Jedi Fallen Order yet, except we know it's about a Padawan who survives the Jedi execution and ventures off on some sort of adventure. So I'm curious about that and optimistic.
I think for me, it's Galaxy's Edge, because I think as a 4-year-old watching Star Wars on the big screen for the first time, I immediately wanted to live in that world. And you grow up and realize that all things ever built for Star Wars movies were temporary and eventually torn down. And this is the first time that there'll be something with some permanence to it that people will be able to go to and walk around and touch and feel and see and smell and all of these different things. And well, finally, my 4-year-old self finally gets to go walk around in a real Star Wars world for a bit.
Yeah, guys, we get to take our kids on the Millennium Falcon. Who in their right mind would have ever thought that would be a possibility? That being a longtime Disney fan, I mean, I worked there back in college. I proposed to my wife there. It's always been a special place to me. So knowing that I'm going to get to go to a Disney theme park and get to experience Star Wars in a way I never thought possible with all 5 of my senses is mind-blowing. Celebration Chicago is always, any celebration is really great, especially being able to connect with so many Star Wars fans out there, from, as you guys said, from all over the globe. But this is going to be tremendous. It's been tremendous talking to the both of you, as always. Clayton, where can people find you if they want to ask you a question or just say hello?
Twitter is always good. Clayton_Sandell.
And Anthony, what about you?
I'm on Twitter at Breznican, BREZNICAN.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are the podcast you're looking for. This is.
Before we get to email, I want to thank our CWK sponsors, One Nation Coffee and Mouse Fan Travel. Be sure to support them the way they support our podcast, and remember to listen to new and archive shows of Coffee with Kenobi wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, Spreaker, Overcast, Blog Talk Radio, Player FM, or our website, www.coffeewithkenobi.com, or wherever you enjoy listening to your favorite shows. And if you listen to the show through iTunes, please leave us a review. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, where you can find some past videos of our CWK Coffee Chat, Pinterest, and Tumblr, and we'd love for you to check us out there. Be sure to listen to our CWK family of shows too, including Legends Library, Resistance Reactions, Comics with Kenobi, and Lattes with Leia. Please leave a review for each of their shows as well, and be sure to subscribe to each of them individually, as they all have their own feeds now. In addition to the places I just mentioned for Coffee with Kenobi, you can find me twice a month on the podcast Looking at Lucasfilm, part of the Jim Hill Media Network, as well as on Twitter at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR, and you can find my writing on CWK's website, as well as StarWars.com, where I'm an official blogger there, and on IGN, where I contribute articles on Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. Don't forget to check out www.patreon.com/coffeewithkenobi to help support the show, as well as get access to CWK Pour Over, which is our podcast, our weekly podcast, not heard anywhere else. There are also t-shirts, coffee mugs, and so many more opportunities and ways for you to not only support the show, but get something pretty cool out of it as well. A big thank you to Clayton Sandell and Anthony Breznican for joining us today. Thank you as always for joining me for a cup of coffee. Be sure to stay tuned next week for more conversation from some of your favorite Star Wars personalities. This is a podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.